In the beginning, there was a girl and her dog. That's how this origin story begins, anyway. Of course, before that, there was a boy and his coyote, and before that, another boy and his coon dogs. And before that, probably a lot more humans and canines. But the old black and white photos of my dad as a baby reaching out to touch a coyote in the yard at the edge of the woods, I think perfectly express the wildness I've inherited, as well as a long-standing familial connection with canines. That wildness led me to the Colorado Trail 7 years ago, when, after living in West Texas for 9 years, I was so desperate to be near water and forests again that I started driving 8 hours one way to segment hike the Colorado Trail on weekends and holidays. And that connection with canines has resulted in partnerships with several remarkable dogs in my nearly 5 decades. But what all of this is for certain, I can't yet say, except to say that it's rooted in love and heartbreak, and a longing to share something deeper with the world than just a few 100,000 silent breaths and a deep bow. Love Dogs is the trail name of my pack. It's a rebirth of sorts, or maybe a homecoming, after leaving a reliable but unfulfilling job 5 years ago to refocus on being an artist. In my heart, it's a conscious choice to live more fully despite my circumstances.
We did it!
And whatever else it becomes, it will forever owe its creation to one special dog. Bella Junebug was a beautiful white boxer. I found her in Nebraska just months before I moved to West Texas to pursue a doctoral degree. She was my introduction to the goofy world of boxers, and it didn't take long for me to fall in love with her antics. Bella got me through some really tough times, and we had just started having fun when she was diagnosed with osteosarcoma at 7.5 years old. For the 3 months that followed that diagnosis, every second of life came sharply into focus. I slept with her on pee pads that covered every square inch of my studio floor because the combination of gabapentin and prednisone was making her sleep and pee in equal, uncontrollable parts. I walked beside her slowly as the tumor on her shoulder got bigger and she limped to her favorite tree at the park across the street. And I sat with her under that tree, sometimes for hours, in silent admiration of her graceful acceptance of the way things were. After she was gone, I realized that Bella had taught me more about how to face death and life with love and courage than any human had. Those last 3 months of her life were the most clear-eyed that I have ever been about what I wanted out of life, and I promised her and myself that I would hang on to that for as long as I could. A few weeks after I lost Bella, I called someone about a bull boxer puppy that needed a home. When I went to meet her for the first time, she ran across the room to my feet as soon as I walked in the door. When I picked her up, she stuck her tiny, fawn-colored nose under my chin, the exact same thing Bella had done when I first picked her up 7 years before. That did it. Most dog people will tell you that you don't choose a dog. The dog chooses you. This puppy had just chosen me. I named her Mani. Mani is Tibetan for jewel, and she had a white mark on the back of her neck that looked just like a little white jewel. The name Mani also references the Tibetan Buddhist mantra Om Mani Padme Hum. When recited, it's said to invoke compassion, an auspicious name, especially because I needed the invocation of compassion pretty regularly for the first year of our life together.
I gotta go back to work. Would you like to go camping? Will you sleep in a tent with Mama? Would you hike with your backpack? Yeah?
Mani was a smart, hard-working, bores-easily dog, and connecting with her like I did with Bella was a real struggle.
We're gonna go backpacking tomorrow.
Rather than being focused on me, her human, she was completely independent. It took a lot of patience and persistence to build a connection with her, and I'm proud of that.
Mani, where's Mama's nose? Where's Mama's nose?
Even after having one trainer tell me that Mani would never be the dog I wanted her to be, I stayed with it. I worked with her every day before work, at lunchtime, and after work. We started segment hiking the Colorado Trail southbound from Denver in June of 2016. She was a year and a half and finally grown enough to handle the intense exercise without potential physical harm. In addition to being a desperately needed immersion in forest and mountain wilderness for me, it was really the best way for both of us to learn how to work better together as a team. With every mile we hiked, our trust in each other grew and our connection strengthened.
Good girl. Good girl. It's fine. You're fine. Come over here. Come over here. There you go. There you go. Okay, keep going. Keep going. Good girl. Good girl. Oh, we did it. Yay!
We continued our weekend trips between West Texas and Colorado for 3 seasons. Mani started getting excited at the mere appearance of my backpack.
You like your Echo? Do you like your Echo?
When I quit my job in 2018 to become a full-time photographer, I needed to spend that summer focusing on a business plan. We got a few segments of backpacking in, but not many. The summer of 2019, I decided, would be our finish. I worked out an itinerary that was 35 days long and scheduled it in my calendar. That's longer than most thru-hikers would take to complete the entire trail. But with Mani, I needed to be careful. I limited the number of miles per day to 10, with the occasional exception, and I added some 0 days to make sure we both got adequate rest.
This is for the trail. This is all for the trail. Yeah.
The goal was to finish the trail together, all 6 paws walking all 486.2 miles together. Sadly, that didn't happen. A situation arose that pushed us off the trail after completing only a few miles that year. I returned to Lubbock feeling utterly defeated. 3 months later, 2 days before Thanksgiving, I took Monty to the vet for symptoms of a urinary tract infection and was blindsided with a diagnosis of lymphosarcoma. Within 3 weeks, I'd lost her.
Say hello to Monty.
Several times in the last few weeks of Monty's life, I recall thinking that I would never get another dog. Watching 2 in a row die of cancer less than 5 years apart was hard, really hard. As I drove home from the vet clinic after Monty's last visit, I thought about all the things I would do without a dog. The next day, I got up and packed the car and drove back to the Midwest for Christmas. Somewhere in that long 12-hour drive, the first I'd made without a dog in over 10 years, I made a few rediscoveries about who I am. I'm a dog person. It's really that simple. I grew up around animals, domesticated and wild, and I love them all, but I have an inherited proclivity for canines. I have developed a particular proclivity for large, difficult canines that nobody else wants. The abandoned ones, the forgotten ones, the ones deemed too stubborn or too aggressive because they require more time and patience than many humans are able or willing to give. While many aren't, I am able to provide the time, patience, love, and commitment to these dogs. And for me, that's the bottom line, really. I am able. I have the experience with bully breeds, and I find it hugely rewarding to work with them. In a world where breed-specific legislation and dangerous animal designations have stripped these dogs of any fair chance to live a life unhindered by fearful people who would rather see them all euthanized, I am one who can give them a safe place to exist. Actually, I can do better than that. I can offer them a fun-filled life of outdoor adventures that might just help correct the general public's misguided perceptions about them. And while death is never easy, especially after so little time, it isn't an excuse to deny an obvious connection and obligation to these remarkable beings. So, when I arrived at my parents' place, I mentioned to them that I might want to make a trip to an animal shelter, just to look. We ended up driving an hour north to a shelter in Council Bluffs, Iowa, where we met a 6-month-old blue-nosed pit bull and German Shepherd mix named Theo. Council Bluffs has a pit bull ban, so Theo was at a real disadvantage there. The shelter workers had done a terrific job training him, but at 6 months old, he was already a large puppy and nearing the age where shelter life would take a much stronger hold on him behaviorally. He needed someone from out of state to adopt him, get him out of the shelter, and get him set on the right course for a successful future. I scheduled a second visit for the following week on Christmas Eve. When I returned on Christmas Eve, I knew that I was going to adopt him. I'd already stopped at a pet store along the way and bought him a couple of toys, a slip lead for training, and some puppy food. Oh yeah, and an engraved name tag. This is Jaffe. Jaffe is the name of Gary Snyder's character in the book Dharma Bums by Jack Kerouac. And Gary Snyder is one of my favorite outdoor authors and poets. Upon our arrival home in Texas, I started Jaffe's training immediately. Even from a young age, Jaffe was easily overstimulated. He didn't know what to do with increased levels of excitement and often would resort to destructive behaviors as a result. I've lost count of how many blankets, pillows, beds, toys, and other items he's destroyed. It was very clear that he needed a job, less anthropomorphizing, and more direct leadership in order to be successful. He was smart and driven, though, and I was excited to see what a great dog he would become. A few weeks after I adopted Jaffe, he developed a hacking cough and significant nasal discharge. A vet surmised that the diagnosis was distemper, and he did a test to confirm. By the next week, we had a positive test result, and I was heartbroken. Distemper is a highly contagious virus that is second only to rabies in canine deaths. One of the most frustrating aspects of dealing with this virus was there was no proven treatment plan that's widely known and practiced across the animal medicine profession. The virus is considered to be currently without a cure, and a distemper diagnosis is overwhelmingly treated as a death sentence. For 3 months, from January to March 2020, we were forced into quarantine due to the contagious nature of this virus. I sought help from my regular vet as well as several other people who were involved in dog rescue in the United States and Mexico. Somehow, we managed to get him through distemper, just in time for the COVID-19 pandemic to send us back into quarantine. Needless to say, Jaffe didn't have the best start to life. But he's now healthy and happy, and we're making up for the lost time. In October of 2020, I was browsing the local Craigslist ads when I saw a posting for a 2-month-old chocolate pit bull puppy being sold for $40. I'd been considering a second dog for a while, and after looking at the photos in the posting, I couldn't stop thinking about this little brown puppy. So I sent an inquiry. After a few days of trying to communicate with the people who had her, the whole situation started to seem a little sketchy. But I asked a friend to go with me for a visit. When we arrived, I noticed right away that she was malnourished and needed help. So without much hesitation, I paid the $40 cash and took her home. I waited until after our first vet visit to tell anyone else about her. Aside from having worms and weighing a mere 8 pounds, she was fine. We got her on a dewormer, started her puppy shots, and brought her home to meet Jaffe. I named her Chocolate Hazelnut, Hazel for short. Jaffe adored her and was exactly the kind of big brother she needed. She learned a lot simply by watching him, so training was pretty easy. As she grew and we neared the time when she could start backpacking the Colorado Trail with Jaffe and me, we'd spent a lot of time outdoors, camping and hiking, training and desensitizing her to various scenarios. Through our training, it was clear that she had some breeds in her mix that predisposed her to certain activities. I did a DNA test on her and discovered that she's a mix of 9 breeds, with the highest percentages being American Pit Bull Terrier, Labrador, Australian Shepherd, and Australian Cattle Dog. That certainly explains a lot of things. She's a very athletic and agile dog and can maneuver terrain like a little mountain goat. In short, she was made for trail work. Our first adventure on the Colorado Trail with all three of us together was in September of 2021, and both dogs did beautifully. I was, as I usually am, hyper-vigilant about everything. When we'd finished that first trip, I realized I'd been worried about Hazel for absolutely no reason. She's physically and mentally built for this type of work. And while Jaffe is not as agile as Hazel, I don't think I've ever had two dogs more capable of long-distance wilderness backpacking than these two. It's very exciting. When Monty died, I'd honestly thought my dream of completing the Colorado Trail had died with her. I lost motivation. The first time I was on trail without her, it was surprisingly emotional. Everywhere I looked, I saw hearts. Each step up the long, steep climbs, I'd look down and see heart-shaped rocks on the trail. And once, while writing in my notebook, a heart-shaped aspen leaf fell onto my page. I decided I need to finish for Monty, and that I need to do it with the new Love Dogs pack. Myself, Jaffe, and Hazel, and the memories of the great ones who came before them. I've noticed that something changes in these two when we're out there, and I'd wager that it's similar to what happens to me when I move towards a life that's more fully engaged with nature. The senses sharpen, energy increases, curiosity and wonder bring us to life. We'll keep chasing that curiosity and wonder down every good trail we can find. But this one, the Colorado Trail, will always be very special to me. This is Monty's Trail. Monty sure did leave a mark on my life. She taught me about the work that real unconditional love requires us to do, and how that work can turn into one hell of a magnificent adventure.